Your attitude is either opening or closing your mind, making you a conventional thinker or a youthful, creative maverick. I want to tell you a story about the childhood of the great Russian writer Anton Chekhov, who grew up some 160 years ago in the town of Taganrog, a mere 450 miles from here, Kiev. Now, Chekhov had a most miserable childhood. Almost every morning, his father, Pavel Yegorovich, would beat him. But at least he was not alone in this, for he would also beat his 4 brothers and his 1 sister. His afternoons were almost worse. While his father would go out drinking, he would ask Anton to mind the family grocery store. It was so cold in the grocery store that if Anton Chekhov tried to do his homework, his fingers would freeze up and he couldn't move them. The store was the gathering spot for all the local drunks who would come in there to buy their vodka. And all day long, Anton would have to hear their raunchy jokes and their depressing stories. In his few hours that he had to himself, Anton would amble through town and he would wonder about himself. Maybe I am as worthless and lazy as my father says I am. Maybe I deserve to be beaten. Then in 1875, when Anton was 15, his 2 older brothers ran away to Moscow to escape their overbearing father. In the meantime, the father had so mismanaged the running of the grocery store that it was facing bankruptcy. And before he could be carted off to debtor's prison, he ran away to Moscow to join his 2 other sons. The mother was forced to sell the family house and its possessions, and then she took her 2 youngest children to go to Moscow to join the rest of the family. Anton was left alone in Taganrog to sell the remaining possessions, to keep a little bit for himself, and to finish his studies. In the first few weeks and days alone in Taganrog, Anton was beside himself with rage and bitterness at his father, who was the source of all of these miseries. But he had no time to feel depressed or feel sorry for himself. He had virtually no money, and he was trapped in Taganrog. He hired himself out to wealthy families as a tutor. He decided he wanted to become a doctor, but in order to get into medical school, he would have to study much harder. So he started to frequent the town library, and there he discovered books on literature and philosophy. This had an explosive effect on his young mind. He could travel mentally far beyond Taganrog into the realm of ideas. He was not trapped at all. Soon, new thoughts came to him. He wasn't lazy by nature at all. He loved absorbing his mind in the ideas and the lives of his students in his tutoring. He could support and take care of himself. He was not worthless at all. Finally, alone, he could think for himself and reevaluate his life. Even Taganrog was not that bad. All of its strange characters in town were now supplying him endless material for the short stories that he was beginning to write. Then one day, as he was walking through town, the greatest day of his life, he had an epiphany. His grandfather, whom you can see in this picture, had been born a serf. And beset with feelings of rage and inferiority, he began to beat all of his sons. But the grandfather had saved enough money to buy his family's freedom, and he set up all of his sons in different businesses. But no one had as much emotional baggage as Anton Chekhov. The secret, as Chekhov discovered, was to taste for just a moment that freedom and sense of power that can come from letting go of the past and facing the future with a fearless and life-affirming attitude. Once you taste this freedom and power, there is no going back. You will want more and more of it. We shall return to this idea of the foretaste of power and how to achieve it in your lives. But right now, I want to go more deeply into the science behind this idea of the attitude. The great psychologist Carl Jung once wrote, "Attitude is the readiness of the psyche to act or react in a certain way. To have an attitude means to be ready for something definite, even though this something is unconscious. For having an attitude is synonymous with an a priori orientation to a definite thing." What this means is that in the course of a day, your brains are receiving thousands of stimuli from the world, and your minds interpret the stimuli according to this a priori orientation or disposition. Our minds anticipate excitement or danger in what we perceive, and this colors what we see. No two people see the same events in the same way. Our interpretations of the stimuli can vary depending on our mood, whether we are happy or depressed. But in general, each one of you has a predominant orientation, a way of anticipating events. We are never conscious of this, but because it occurs so naturally and quickly, we assume that we are seeing the world as it is, instead of the fact that we are actually seeing the world as filtered through our attitude. And this attitude can be a mix of factors. It can be a product of genetics. Some of us are simply born more anxious than others. It can be a product of powerful experiences in childhood or in youth. Now let me explain how this attitude works by giving you an example. Let's say we're taking a walk through a forest path on a very beautiful day, on a very beautiful sunny day, and we're alone. Suddenly we turn a corner and the path is blocked by this stream in front of us. There is no way to continue this walk unless we somehow cross the stream. Now one of you might look at this scene and notice that across the stream is a beautiful meadow where the path continues. You will notice some rocks in the stream that you could possibly jump across to get to the other side. You don't mind if you fall, and you don't care if your clothes get wet. It's a fun challenge, so you decide to jump across the rocks, you go to the other side to the meadow, and you continue your beautiful, blissful walk on this path. Now another one of you will look at this scene and see something much differently. You will notice clouds on the horizon that might indicate rain in an hour or two. You notice some moss on the rocks, and you imagine yourself slipping and hitting your head on them. And if you fall into the water, you might catch a cold and get sick. And even if you somehow manage to cross the stream, you're going to have to recross it on the way back. No, it's not worth it. Although you feel frustrated that this is the end of the walk, you turn around and go back. Here, two people are seeing the exact same thing, but one sees only dangers and obstacles, while the other person sees a fun challenge. We can see the same dynamic in business. As an entrepreneur, you have a goal, a project, or a startup to realize. You begin the process, but suddenly there's some obstacles that block your progress. One of you will focus on the bad things that will happen if you go ahead, and so you turn around. Another one of you sees the obstacles as an opportunity. This means that most people will be discouraged from proceeding, and you'll have the entire field to yourself. You embrace the challenge. It's a test. It's a way to prove yourself. It's a way to toughen yourself up. This is the entrepreneurial mindset, which you must work to adopt for yourself. We can compare the attitude to the aperture of a lens. When you are fearful, that aperture tends to close down, giving you a narrow perspective on the world. If you take in less, you have less to fear. But as your mind closes down, you miss seeing opportunities and coming up with new ideas. Some of the best ideas in business are creative combinations that no one had ever thought of, such as microtechnology and music, and voila, the iPod. But if that lens opens up and expands, suddenly you can see all kinds of combinations and connections out there in the world that nobody else is seeing because of their fearful, closed lens, the way they're looking at the world. In this case, the chaos of the world is not something to fear, but something to exploit. Now you can come up with all kinds of incredible combinations of ideas because of this chaotic, wild world that we're living in. This is the source of all creative thinking.